In the 5th century BCE, the world witnessed a clash unlike any other. A collision of two mighty civilizations that would forever alter the course of history. On one side stood Greece, a fragmented collection of fiercely independent city-states united only by their love of freedom and a shared cultural heritage. On the other, the Persian Empire, the largest and most powerful empire the world had ever seen, stretching from the shores of the Aegean Sea to the vast deserts of Central Asia. This was no ordinary conflict. This was a battle for the soul of civilization itself. The Greco-Persian Wars were not merely a series of battles fought over land or resources. They were a monumental struggle between opposing ideals. Greece represented the spirit of democracy, individualism, and defiance against tyranny. Persia symbolized vast imperial power, centralized authority, and unparalleled wealth. The stakes were high, one misstep, and Greece could have been swept away, its culture lost to history. But what made this war so extraordinary was the courage and resilience of the Greeks, who, against all odds, dared to stand against an empire that dwarfed them in size and strength. Their victories, from the legendary last stand at Thermopylae to the strategic brilliance displayed at Salamis, became the stuff of legend, inspiring countless generations. These battles were not just military confrontations, they were defining moments that shaped the very essence of Western civilization. This conflict wasn't only about the clash of armies, it was a tale of alliances forged in desperation, strategies born out of necessity, and sacrifices made in the name of something greater. The Greco-Persian Wars are more than a chapter in history. They are a testament to humanity's ability to rise above adversity and fight for what they believe in. Over the next few minutes, we'll explore the roots of this epic confrontation, dive into the dramatic and pivotal battles that turned the tide, and uncover the far-reaching consequences that rippled across centuries. How did a small group of city-states defy the mightiest empire on Earth? What lessons do these ancient struggles still teach us today? Stay with us as we unravel this incredible story of bravery, ingenuity, and the unyielding human spirit. This is more than history. This is the story of how the fate of the world was decided on the battlefields of Greece and Persia. The journey begins now. Our journey begins in the heart of the ancient world, where the rise of the Persian Empire transformed the course of history. In the 6th century BCE, a visionary leader named Cyrus the Great emerged from the arid lands of Persia, uniting a fractured region under a single powerful banner. Known not just for his military genius but for his enlightened rule, Cyrus pioneered an empire built on tolerance, diplomacy, and integration. He respected the customs and religions of the peoples he conquered, earning their loyalty and ensuring stability in his ever-expanding domain. Under Cyrus, Persia became a beacon of power and innovation, with an infrastructure that connected its vast lands. Roads like the Royal Road spanned thousands of miles, enabling communication, trade, and the rapid movement of armies. But empires, by their nature, are driven to grow, and Persia was no exception. By the time of Darius I, the empire's third great king, Persia had become the largest empire the world had ever known, encompassing nearly half of the known world's population. Darius was not content to merely inherit an empire, he sought to perfect it. He introduced systems of administration that centralized power while allowing local rulers some autonomy. Satrapies, or provincial governments, were established, each governed by a satrap who reported directly to the king. This balance of control and local governance was revolutionary, allowing Persia to manage its vast territories effectively. Yet with great power came even greater ambition. Darius's eyes turned westward, to the lands of the Greek city-states that bordered the empire's reach. To Darius, these Greek city-states, Athens, Sparta, and their allies, were small, disorganized polities that posed little threat to his empire's might. However, the Greeks' fierce independence and refusal to submit to Persian control became a thorn in his side. This tension came to a boiling point in 499 BCE, when the Ionian Revolt erupted. Greek city-states in Asia Minor, already under Persian rule, rose up in rebellion, driven by their desire for autonomy and inspired by the ideals of freedom. Athens and Eretria, small but bold city-states from mainland Greece, supported the Ionian cause. Their involvement infuriated Darius. To him, this was more than a rebellion, it was an insult to Persian dominance and a direct challenge to his authority. The revolt was ultimately crushed after years of brutal fighting, but the consequences would reverberate far beyond the borders of Ionia. The rebellion planted a seed of defiance in the Greek psyche and lit a fire of vengeance in Darius's heart. The Persian king famously commanded one of his servants to remind him daily, "Master, remember the Athenians," so his resolve for retribution would never waver. This vow marked the beginning of Persia's westward campaigns, aiming not just to punish Athens but to bring all of Greece under Persian control. But what made Persia's expansion so remarkable was its ability to blend brute force with strategic finesse. The Persian Empire didn't just conquer lands, it assimilated them, weaving their cultures and economies into its vast imperial structure. Its military was unmatched, with a diverse army that included soldiers from every corner of its realm, archers from Media, cavalry from Bactria, and infantry from Mesopotamia. The empire's wealth and resources seemed limitless, and its ambition was boundless. Yet, it was this very ambition that would bring Persia face to face with a formidable adversary, the fiercely independent Greeks. As the Ionian flames of rebellion smoldered, Darius began preparations for an invasion that would teach the Greeks the price of defiance. His army would march across the Hellespont, and his fleets would sail across the Aegean, determined to bring the proud city-states to their knees. But what he didn't anticipate was the unity and resilience that these scattered cities could muster when faced with an existential threat. This chapter of history is not just about expansion and rebellion. It's about the spark that ignited a monumental conflict. The Ionian Revolt was the first act in a drama that would span decades and shape the destiny of civilizations. It set the stage for the epic clashes to come, where courage and ingenuity would challenge sheer power and numbers. Join us as we delve deeper into this unfolding saga, exploring the intricate strategies of the Persian Empire, the audacious spirit of the Greeks, and the battles that would decide the fate of the ancient world. This is the story of ambition, resistance, and the enduring struggle for freedom. The year is 490 BCE, and the Persian Empire, the most powerful force the ancient world has ever seen, has turned its gaze westward. Following the Ionian Revolt, King Darius I, enraged by Athens' defiance, seeks retribution. This invasion was not merely a military campaign, it was an effort to crush the spirit of resistance that had taken root in Greece and to remind the world that the Persian Empire was an unstoppable juggernaut. The first Persian invasion of Greece was meticulously planned. Darius dispatched an expeditionary force across the Aegean Sea, led by his trusted generals Datis and Artaphernes. This force, numbering tens of thousands of soldiers, aimed to subdue the Greek city-states and punish Athens for its audacity. They landed on the plains of Marathon, a site strategically chosen for its flat terrain, which was ideal for Persian cavalry maneuvers. The Persian army was a spectacle of diversity. Warriors from every corner of the empire, armed with bows, short spears and light shields, a stark contrast to the heavily armored Greek hoplites. The Athenians, though vastly outnumbered, refused to cower. They understood the stakes of this confrontation. Losing at Marathon would not just mean the subjugation of their city, it would mean the end of their nascent democracy, a political experiment that was unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. Athens, led by the visionary general Miltiades, knew they could not wait for the Persians to march unopposed toward the city. They had to act. Miltiades, understanding the terrain and the strengths of his smaller force, devised a strategy that would exploit the Persians' reliance on their cavalry and numerical superiority. The Athenian army, approximately 10,000 strong, formed a battle line along the plain. Miltiades deliberately weakened the center of his formation, strengthening the flanks instead. It was a daring tactic that required precise execution and extraordinary discipline from his men. As dawn broke over Marathon, the Athenians made their move. In a bold and unprecedented maneuver, they charged the Persian line at full speed, a terrifying sight of bronze and determination rushing across the plain. The Persians, taken aback by the audacity of this direct assault, unleashed waves of arrows, but the Greeks pressed on, their heavy shields deflecting much of the incoming fire. When the two armies clashed, the Athenian superior armor and discipline proved decisive. The weakened Greek center initially gave ground, luring the Persian forces forward. But this was part of Miltiades' plan. As the Persians advanced into the apparent gap, the stronger Greek flanks closed in from both sides, enveloping the enemy in a deadly pincer movement. The once organized Persian ranks descended into chaos. With no room to maneuver and no cavalry to rescue them, the Persian soldiers were slaughtered or forced to flee back to their ships. The victory at Marathon was nothing short of miraculous. In a single battle, the Athenians had demonstrated that the mighty Persian war machine was not invincible. They had shown that courage, strategy, and unity could overcome even the most daunting odds. It was a triumph not only for Athens but for all of Greece, a beacon of hope that would inspire future generations. But Marathon's significance extended far beyond the battlefield. It became a symbol of resistance against tyranny, a defining moment that underscored the value of freedom and self-determination. The story of Phidippides, the legendary runner who raced from Marathon to Athens to announce the victory with the word Nike. Victory cemented the battle's place in both history and mythology. Though he collapsed and died upon delivering the message, his feat inspired the modern marathon, a tribute to endurance and resolve. For the Persians, the defeat at Marathon was a bitter humiliation. Though it was a minor setback in the grand scheme of their empire, it shattered the perception of their invincibility. For Darius, it was a challenge he could not ignore. He began preparations for an even larger invasion, one that would bring all of Greece to its knees. The Battle of Marathon was more than a military clash, it was a philosophical one. It was a battle between an empire that sought to dominate through power and a small, fiercely independent city-state that valued freedom above all else. The lessons of Marathon resonate even today, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, determination and ingenuity can prevail. This was just the beginning. The first Persian invasion set the stage for an epic struggle that would span decades, culminating in some of the greatest battles of antiquity. Join us as we continue to explore the incredible saga of the Greco-Persian Wars, where the fate of civilizations hung in the balance. After the resounding defeat at Marathon, the Persian Empire was forced to confront its own limitations. King Darius I, the architect of the first invasion, had passed away, but his dream of expanding Persia's dominion into Greece was far from over. Darius' son, Xerxes I, ascended to the throne, inheriting his father's vision but also the burden of avenging the humiliation at Marathon. Xerxes, known for his grand ambitions and unparalleled arrogance, saw the Greek city-states as mere obstacles in the way of Persia's ultimate supremacy. In 480 BCE, he resolved to conquer Greece with overwhelming force the likes of which the world had never seen. Xerxes was not merely assembling an army, he was crafting a spectacle of power. His preparations were monumental, stretching over years of planning. To march his massive forces across the Aegean into Greece, he ordered the construction of a bridge across the Hellespont, a crucial choke point between Asia and Europe. This bridge, made by lashing together hundreds of ships, was a marvel of engineering, demonstrating Persian ingenuity and the sheer scale of Xerxes' ambition. The bridge symbolized not just a physical crossing but also the crossing of a new threshold in world history, a portal through which the future of Greece, and indeed the Western world, would be decided. As the Persian forces marched westward, the scale of Xerxes' invasion became clear. The Persian army numbered somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 soldiers. Some accounts suggest even more, made up of soldiers from every part of the Persian Empire, from India to Egypt, all brought together by the will of their king. Xerxes' army was not just an army of men, it was a statement. It was a collection of warriors, chariots, cavalry, and war elephants, all unified under one banner. Alongside this ground force, Xerxes commanded a colossal fleet of over 600 ships, its sheer number dwarfing the naval forces of any city-state in Greece. His goal was simple: to crush the Greeks and show the world the undeniable power of the Persian Empire. The invasion began with Xerxes crossing the Hellespont in the spring of 480 BCE. To the Greeks, it was a terrifying omen. The passage of such a vast force was a declaration of war, but the Greeks were far from powerless. They had experienced Persian brutality firsthand, but they also understood that if they were to survive, they had to stand together. Despite their differences, the Greek city-states formed a fragile alliance, and their fate now rested on a series of battles that would test their courage, unity, and ingenuity against the overwhelming might of Persia. The first major test came at Thermopylae, a narrow mountain pass that formed a natural barrier between the Persian army and the heart of Greece. King Leonidas of Sparta, with just 300 of his finest warriors, along with several thousand other Greek soldiers, made their heroic stand against Xerxes' seemingly unstoppable tide. The Greeks were vastly outnumbered. Estimates suggest that the Persian forces at Thermopylae numbered anywhere from 100,000 to over 200,000. Yet, King Leonidas and his warriors, heavily armed and trained in the brutal art of warfare, were determined to hold the pass and delay the Persians for as long as possible. The Greeks fought with incredible resolve, forming their famous phalanx formation, a shield wall that was nearly impenetrable to the Persians' lighter troops. For days, Leonidas and his men fought off wave after wave of Persian assaults. They made use of the terrain, drawing the Persians into the narrow confines of the pass, where their superior numbers could not fully come into play. But it was not just military prowess that made Thermopylae legendary, it was the bravery and sacrifice of the 300 Spartans. They knew they would not survive, but they fought to buy time for the rest of Greece to prepare for the coming storm. Eventually, a Greek traitor named Ephialtes betrayed the Spartans, revealing a secret mountain path that allowed the Persian forces to flank the Greek position. Surrounded, Leonidas and his warriors fought to the death, their heroism immortalized in history and legend. Their stand at Thermopylae became a symbol of defiance and courage in the face of impossible odds. Though they were defeated, the Greeks had shown the world that they would not be cowed by the Persian Empire, and their sacrifice became a rallying cry for the Greeks to continue the fight. Meanwhile, on the seas, the Greeks were facing their own battle at Artemisium. While Thermopylae raged on, the Greek fleet under the command of Themistocles faced off against the Persian navy in the Straits of Artemisium. The battle was a series of naval engagements over several days, with the Greek fleet, far smaller and less powerful than the Persian armada, holding its ground. Although Artemisium ended inconclusively, it demonstrated that the Greeks could challenge Persian naval supremacy and inflict damage on the Persians. It set the stage for the decisive confrontation that would soon follow. The turning point came at Salamis, where the Greek navy, under Themistocles' brilliant leadership, lured the Persian fleet into the narrow waters of the Salamis Strait. Themistocles had cleverly feigned retreat, tricking Xerxes into thinking he could trap the Greek fleet in open waters. But as the Persian ships entered the strait, their size and numbers worked against them. The narrow waters made it impossible for the Persians to maneuver, and the smaller, more agile Greek ships, with their expert crews, struck decisively. The battle was a resounding victory for the Greeks. Xerxes, watching from a distant hill, saw his once mighty fleet reduced to wreckage. Salamis was the turning point in the Second Persian invasion. It was a devastating defeat for Xerxes, who now had to retreat, knowing that the Greek city-states had successfully repelled his invasion. Despite his overwhelming superiority in numbers and resources, Persia had failed to subdue the Greeks. The battles of Thermopylae, Artemisium, and Salamis proved that sheer might could be overcome by strategy, unity, and determination. The Persian king had learned a harsh lesson: his empire, as vast as it was, could be defeated. The invasion of Xerxes was more than just a military failure for Persia, it was a cultural turning point. The Persian Empire, despite its overwhelming size and power, was halted by a small group of city-states who valued their independence above all else. The Greeks had not just won a series of battles, they had fought to preserve their way of life, their values, and their freedom. The stage was now set for the final chapter in this epic saga, the Battle of Plataea, where the fate of Greece and the future of Western civilization would be decided once and for all. In 479 BCE, the fate of Greece and the entire Western world hung in the balance as the Greek city-states, for the first time in history, set aside their differences to confront the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire, after years of devastating wars against the Greeks, had one final chance to crush the resistance and establish their domination. Yet, the battle for Plataea was not only about military might, it was about the will to preserve a way of life, a culture, and an identity against a relentless foreign invader. The Greeks, though vastly outnumbered by the Persian forces, had something the Persians could never take from them: unity, determination, and an unwavering belief in their cause. The Persian Empire, which spanned from India to the Aegean Sea, had been led by the mighty Xerxes, who, after his father Darius' death, sought to avenge his loss at Marathon and the naval disasters at Salamis. Despite these setbacks, Xerxes was relentless in his desire to conquer Greece, and he prepared to unleash his greatest military force on the Greek city-states. But the Greeks, unified under a single, shared purpose, would not surrender. The Battle of Plataea would be the culmination of their decade-long struggle for survival. The Greeks had already tasted victory at Salamis, where their naval superiority had crushed the Persian fleet, and at Thermopylae, where King Leonidas and his Spartans made their heroic stand. The unity they had achieved in those battles would now be tested once again on the plains of Plataea, where the final act of the Persian invasion would unfold. The Persian forces, led by the general Mardonius, boasted an enormous army, said to have numbered around 100,000 men. Their ranks were filled with soldiers from across the Persian Empire, archers from Asia Minor, elite immortals, cavalry from the vast Persian heartlands, and infantry from regions as distant as India. The Persian cavalry, in particular, was a formidable force, thought to be a decisive advantage for the Persians. However, the Greeks were well prepared to fight on the terrain of Plataea, and the Persian cavalry, which was accustomed to wide open spaces, found its effectiveness neutralized by the close-quarters fighting of the Greek phalanx. On the Greek side, a coalition of city-states had come together, with Sparta and Athens at the forefront. Led by Pausanias, the Spartan regent, the Greeks mustered an army of around 40,000 soldiers, far fewer than the Persians, but with unmatched discipline, training, and experience in the art of war. The Greeks, especially the Spartans, had spent decades perfecting their military techniques, and their unique phalanx formation, a dense shield wall of heavily armed hoplites, would prove to be the key to their success. The Athenians, who had played a pivotal role in the victory at Salamis, also brought their soldiers to Plataea, adding their strength to the growing coalition. As the two armies met on the battlefield, the Greek soldiers formed their famous phalanx, a wall of shields and spears that was nearly impenetrable. The Persian archers and cavalry began the battle with an attempt to break the Greek lines, launching a barrage of arrows and cavalry charges. But the Greeks, expertly positioned and ready for the challenge, stood firm. The Greek hoplites, known for their courage and their steadfastness, braved the storm of Persian arrows, holding their lines with unmatched resilience. The Persians initially attempted to overwhelm the Greeks with their vast numbers, but the well-organized Greek phalanx proved too difficult to break. The Greeks had been preparing for this moment for years, and they knew how to fight under the harshest conditions. The Persian generals, despite their numerical superiority, lacked the cohesion and unity that the Greeks had achieved through their shared struggle. The Persian lines, which were spread thin across the battlefield, began to falter under the Greek onslaught. The turning point of the battle came when the Persian forces, frustrated and disorganized, began to retreat. The Persian cavalry, which had been one of their most powerful weapons, could no longer maintain control of the battlefield. The Greek hoplites, with their disciplined formations, relentlessly pursued the retreating Persians. At the same time, the Greek cavalry, under the command of the Theban and Athenian forces, engaged in strategic maneuvers that effectively neutralized the Persian cavalry's advantage. As the battle wore on, the Greeks gained the upper hand. Their leadership, particularly the tactical brilliance of Pausanias, helped guide the Greek forces through the chaotic melee. The Greeks exploited the weaknesses in the Persian lines, and the Persian army, now disordered and broken, could no longer hold its ground. The final blow came as Mardonius, the Persian general who had led the invasion, was killed during the battle, signaling the collapse of the Persian command. By the end of the day, the Greeks had decisively defeated the Persians. The once mighty Persian army was in full retreat, and the Greeks had secured a victory that would reverberate through history. The Battle of Plataea marked the end of the Persian invasions of Greece and ensured the survival of Greek civilization. It also marked the beginning of a new era, in which the Greek city-states would rise to prominence and shape the future of the Western world. The victory at Plataea was not just a military triumph, it was a victory of culture, freedom, and independence. The Greek forces, united in their cause, had proven that even a colossal empire like Persia could be defeated by a people determined to protect their way of life. The battle ensured that Greece would remain free from foreign domination and that its culture, philosophy, and ideas would continue to flourish. The victory at Plataea was, without a doubt, one of the most important turning points in history, and its consequences would resonate for centuries to come. For the Greeks, Plataea was not just a battle, it was a symbol of resistance against tyranny, a celebration of unity in the face of overwhelming odds. The Greek victory at Plataea proved that the power of a united people, armed with courage and conviction, could overcome even the most formidable of empires. Though the thunderous clashes of the Greco-Persian Wars may have come to an end with the victory at Plataea, the ideological and political reverberations continued long after the dust had settled. The outcome of these wars was not just about military victory but about shaping the very essence of what the world would become: East versus West, autocracy versus democracy, empire versus city-state. The battlefields may have been won, but the deeper conflict, one of culture, power, and philosophy, raged on. For the Persians, the outcome was a reminder that their vast empire, the largest the world had ever seen, could not easily be maintained through sheer might alone. Persia's failure to defeat Greece shattered the image of invincibility that their empire had long upheld. After Xerxes' retreat, the Persian Empire faced significant challenges in stabilizing its territories. The defeat at Plataea not only demoralized the Persians but also exposed the vulnerabilities of their vast domain, which stretched from India all the way to the Aegean Sea. Persia's rulers, while still formidable, began to face increasing internal strife, revolts within their far-flung provinces, and the pressure of maintaining their imperial hold over diverse peoples with conflicting cultures and beliefs. The wars, while an important chapter in Persian history, also marked the beginning of a slow decline, with the empire being forced to shift its focus from expansion to consolidation. Despite their failure to conquer Greece, Persia did not collapse. Instead, it adapted. The Persian kings turned inward, seeking ways to maintain control over their empire through diplomacy, cultural assimilation, and, most importantly, suppressing rebellions. The structure of Persian governance was preserved, but the military defeats at the hands of the Greeks would leave a lasting mark on their imperial ambitions. Persia's dreams of expansion were stifled by the resilience of the Greek states and their indomitable will to preserve their autonomy. The Persian Empire would continue to dominate the Near East for centuries, but its prestige as an unstoppable force was forever altered. The notion that no empire was invincible became a powerful truth. On the other hand, Greece emerged from the Greco-Persian Wars as not just victors but as champions of a new way of thinking, of a new world order. The cultural and political changes that took place in the wake of the wars were nothing short of revolutionary. The victory, particularly for Athens, led to the formation of the Delian League, a confederation of Greek city-states that were now united in their shared defense against the Persians. Yet, this alliance soon transformed from a defensive pact into a powerful instrument of Athenian hegemony. Athens, now the dominant power in Greece, began using the Delian League not just to safeguard against future Persian threats, but to impose its will on other Greek states. The wealth generated from tribute payments helped Athens build a naval empire, which played a central role in the city's golden age. Athens flourished culturally and intellectually, and the aftermath of the Greco-Persian Wars saw the dawn of a new era of creativity and thought. With the military threat from Persia seemingly vanquished, the Greeks were free to turn inward, leading to an unprecedented period of intellectual and artistic achievement. Democracy, as conceived in Athens, became the hallmark of Greek society, with philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle reshaping the way humanity thought about ethics, governance, and the nature of reality. Their ideas about reason, individual rights, and the role of the state would profoundly influence the development of Western civilization. The Greek legacy, built on the ideals of liberty, self-governance, and intellectual inquiry, spread far beyond the borders of Greece, becoming the foundation for future democratic movements. However, this new era of Greek power came with its own set of challenges. Athens, in its newfound dominance, found itself at odds with other city-states, particularly Sparta. While Greece was united against the Persian threat, it was never truly united in its internal politics. Tensions between Athens and Sparta, two very different forms of government, grew over time, leading to the outbreak of the Peloponnesian War, a brutal conflict that would ultimately undermine the unity that had been forged in the fires of the Greco-Persian Wars. Despite this internal discord, the legacy of the Greco-Persian Wars endured, as the concept of democracy, born from Athens' victory over Persia, would inspire generations to come. For Persia, however, the wars were a lesson in the limits of imperial power. Though it continued to hold sway in the east, the Persian Empire's defeat by a relatively small collection of city-states in Greece sent ripples throughout the ancient world. Persia would continue to be a major player in the Middle East, but its days of dominating the Greek world were over. The defeat at Plataea, along with the other major Greek victories, fundamentally reshaped the balance of power in the ancient world. In the years that followed, Persia would face new challenges from rising powers such as Macedon under Alexander the Great, whose own conquests would ultimately lead to the downfall of the Persian Empire. The ideological struggle between autocracy and democracy, the notion of empire versus the sovereignty of the city-state, would echo through the centuries. In Greece, the success of the city-state model was seen as proof of the superiority of democratic ideals over the monarchical rule of Persia. In contrast, Persia's absolute monarchy, though weakened, remained a force in the ancient world. As the years passed, the tension between these two contrasting systems of governance would be central to many of the world's great conflicts, and the legacy of the Greco-Persian Wars would influence everything from Roman politics to modern democratic thought. The cultural fallout from the wars was profound, not just for Greece and Persia, but for the entire Western world. The philosophical debates ignited by the wars, concerning the nature of power, freedom, and the state, would become the foundation of political thought for centuries to come. The ideals of democracy, freedom, and self-determination that emerged from the Greek response to Persian imperialism became the rallying cries for future generations fighting for their rights. The contrast between the Greek way of life and the Persian Empire's centralized rule would remain a defining feature of the classical world, shaping not only the future of Greece and Persia but also the course of history itself. As the final chapter in the Greco-Persian Wars closed, it became clear that the conflict had not only shaped the political landscape of the ancient world but had set in motion the ideological currents that would continue to shape the course of human civilization for millennia. The reverberations of these wars would be felt in the rise of Rome, in the spread of Western philosophy, and even in the democratic ideals that underpin modern society. The Greco-Persian Wars may have ended, but the cultural, political, and ideological struggle they set in motion would continue to influence the world long after the smoke of battle had cleared. The Greco-Persian Wars were far more than a series of violent clashes between two mighty civilizations. These wars, fought over the control of land and ideas, represent a transformative chapter in the story of humanity. The conflicts between the Greek city-states and the Persian Empire in the 5th century BCE not only shaped the trajectory of Western civilization but also left a lasting legacy that would echo through centuries. They were a defining moment in the development of key principles such as freedom, democracy, resilience, and unity. Principles that continue to resonate with us today. At the heart of this legacy lies the profound impact on Western philosophy and governance. The wars made the idea of democracy a powerful and enduring concept. The Greek city-states, especially Athens, proved that self-governance and democracy could stand against even the most powerful monarchies. When the Greeks defeated the Persians at battles like Marathon and Salamis, they demonstrated the strength of collective decision-making, citizen participation, and political equality. The defeat of a powerful, centralized Persian monarchy by the decentralized but unified Greek city-states provided a stark contrast between Eastern autocracy and Western democracy. This ideological victory solidified the Greek belief in the inherent right of citizens to participate in their government, a belief that would be passed down to future generations and form the foundation for the Roman Republic and modern democratic systems. Moreover, the victory in these wars helped shape the principles of Western philosophy, particularly with the thinkers who arose during this period. Figures like Herodotus, the historian who chronicled the wars, and thinkers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, would later debate the core ideas of freedom, human nature, and governance, inspired in part by the Greek struggle against Persia. These philosophical musings would go on to influence the foundations of Western political theory, from the Magna Carta to the American Revolution, where the very ideals of freedom and self-determination would be enshrined in law. The Greek idea of the polis or city-state, would become a model for civic participation, and Athens itself would serve as the symbolic birthplace of Western democracy. Military strategy and tactics also saw a profound transformation, as the Greco-Persian Wars revolutionized how wars were fought. The Greek success in these wars wasn't just due to their courage or their army's valor, it was due to their sophisticated understanding of military strategy, particularly their innovative use of the hoplite phalanx and naval tactics. The hoplite warriors, armed with heavy armor and long spears, fought in close-knit formations that were difficult for the Persians to break. The Battle of Marathon, in particular, demonstrated that tactical brilliance and organization could defeat a numerically superior army. But it wasn't just the infantry that made the difference. The Greeks also perfected the art of naval warfare. At the Battle of Salamis, Themistocles employed a strategy of narrow straits, using the Greeks' smaller, more maneuverable ships to outmaneuver the larger Persian fleet. This decisive naval victory turned the tide of the war and marked a turning point in Greek military dominance over the Mediterranean. The lessons learned during these battles would shape military tactics for centuries to come, influencing not just future Greek armies but the Roman legions, medieval knights, and modern-day military strategies. The military victories also played a crucial role in shaping Greek cultural identity. The Greeks, particularly the Athenians, saw themselves as defenders of a way of life that prized freedom, intellectual pursuit, and individual rights. Their victory against the Persians wasn't just a military one, it was a cultural and philosophical triumph. The Persian threat had united the Greek city-states, rivals just years before, under a common cause, demonstrating the power of unity in the face of external threats. This sense of shared purpose laid the groundwork for the flourishing of Greek culture in the years that followed. The post-war period saw an explosion of creativity in art, drama, architecture, and philosophy. The Greeks built monumental structures like the Parthenon to commemorate their victories, and playwrights like Aeschylus and Sophocles began crafting works that explored the very human experience of triumph, loss, and fate, echoing the themes of the Greco-Persian Wars. The concept of the East versus West that emerged from these wars became a defining narrative that would endure for centuries. The Persians, with their vast empire and autocratic rule, represented the East, an almost mysterious and often vilified other. In contrast, the Greeks came to symbolize the ideals of democracy, freedom, and rational thought, values that would come to define the West. The idea that the West stood as a beacon of civilization, against the seemingly oppressive and despotic East, became ingrained in Western thought and culture. This ideological divide would shape not only subsequent historical conflicts, such as the Roman and Persian Wars, but also later cultural clashes, including the Crusades, the Cold War, and even contemporary political rhetoric. But the legacy of the Greco-Persian Wars is not just confined to the realm of governance, military strategy, and cultural identity. The wars also helped lay the groundwork for the development of Western art and literature. The Greek writers and dramatists of the time took inspiration from these events, immortalizing the heroes of the wars in plays and epic poems. Herodotus, whose work Histories provides the earliest detailed account of these wars, not only preserved the history of the conflict but also helped establish the idea of history as a form of inquiry into the past, an idea that would become foundational to Western intellectual traditions. The works of Homer and later Greek dramatists would explore themes of heroism, sacrifice, and the human struggle against fate, touched by the spirit of the Greco-Persian Wars. In the long run, the victories of the Greeks helped cement the cultural dominance of the West, especially in Europe. These wars were the crucible in which the ideals of freedom, democracy, and self-determination were tested and hardened, influencing everything from Renaissance art to modern-day democracy and human rights. The Greek victories against Persia, their triumphs of intellect, military ingenuity, and unity in the face of adversity, continue to inspire millions. As we look at the world today, where ideas of democracy, autonomy, and civic participation still resonate in the political and social realms, we see the enduring legacy of the Greco-Persian Wars in every major political and military conflict that has shaped the modern world. Their impact continues to unfold, not just in history, but in how we perceive the world and our place in it. The Greco-Persian Wars, a saga of courage, strategy, and sacrifice, stand as one of the most pivotal moments in history. From the unyielding bravery of the Spartans at Thermopylae, who fought against insurmountable odds, to the naval brilliance of Themistocles at Salamis, the Greeks demonstrated their resolve to preserve their way of life. And at Plataea, a momentous victory sealed the fate of the Persian Empire's expansion, ensuring that Greece would remain free, a beacon of democracy and culture. But the legacy of these wars is far from confined to ancient times. The lessons of unity in the face of adversity, the power of strategic thinking, and the idea of freedom against tyranny have resonated through the centuries, shaping not only the development of Greece but also the future of Western civilization itself. The war's influence can still be seen in our modern ideals, freedom, justice, and the importance of collective action in the face of oppression. As the dust settled on the battlefield, both the Greeks and the Persians had left their marks on history. The Greeks forged an identity that has lasted over 2 millennia, while the Persians, despite their losses, proved that even the greatest of empires could be challenged. These wars defined the relationship between East and West, setting the stage for the cultural, military, and philosophical exchanges that would shape the world for generations to come. As we conclude this monumental journey through the ancient world, we invite you to reflect on the incredible bravery, strategy, and resilience that defined these epic battles. The sacrifices made on those blood-soaked fields helped to lay the foundation for the freedoms and cultures we cherish today. So, if you found yourself captivated by the rise and fall of empires, by the daring warriors who shaped history, and by the timeless lessons that these events offer us, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. By doing so, you'll continue to join us on our exploration of history's most profound moments, from the greatest battles to the brilliant minds that reshaped the world. There's so much more to uncover, from the rise of civilizations to the legendary figures that left their indelible mark on history. So stay tuned and remember, history isn't just about the past, it's about understanding the forces that continue to shape our world today. Like, share, and subscribe for more epic stories from the past. Join us as we continue to explore the moments that changed the course of history.